Good evening, everyone. It's Rick. It is January 6th. It's 2020. My email is rick, rick0327 at me.com. Please email me if you're interested in receiving paperwork to challenge child support in court. You got to suspend the driver's license. You want to send a cease and desist to your employer, to the child support agency. You received a withholding of income in the mail. Okay, they like to call it income withholding. Well, I've been calling it that, but it's really withholding of income. It's a play on words, uh, in which you have to file a mistake of fact within 45 days. It's usually, all the regulations or whatever written on the withholding of income form, which is an imitation, like you always hear me say, fake judge. Well, this is a fake warrant. Okay, it's a violation of separations of power. Just like some of you out there, you might receive in the mail there's a warrant issued by a child support agency. New York State, they do that. Well, here's the thing: a warrant can only be issued by a judicial body, a court, okay, or by a judicial officer at a court, or it's a violation of separation of power, okay. A country that our country right now is, we're already in it. We're basically a communist country, okay. I mean, we have a constitution in name only. Um, we have lawyers, we have judges. They all swear to the Constitution, but they rarely follow it, or they look to use tricks to get around it without telling you. Um, try and bring up the Constitution to a lawyer and see what kind of reaction you get. I used to harp on that heavily when I first started my channel over 3 years ago, because I was still going through it, and I was explaining to everybody that uh, lawyers don't like to discuss the Constitution because, one, they're not allowed to bring it up in the court. There's no law; it's just like an unwritten rule, and it's hard for them to make money on enforcing the Constitution because it's cut and dry, just like the common law. The common law is okay. If a lawyer has got a lawsuit, they'll assert common law. They'll assert their immunity, any protection under the Constitution. They will invoke, assert, whatever in their answering papers. But if you or I were to do it, they won't do it for you. I went to see an attorney one time, and this is like when I first started like writing my own paperwork. I already figured out, this is back in 2012, and I'd already figured out this was a scam. So I just, I was naive back then. I didn't know what was going on. So I was naive, and I thought that, all right, you know what I'll do? I'll go get a lawyer and I'll have him file paperwork for me. All right. If any of you guys have out there, if you have that idea, don't even bother. It ain't gonna happen. Okay. It won't happen. Anyway, he was yesing me to death, and you know, I'm in back in shape again now, but back then I was in really good shape, and all he kept looking at was my arms. He was like, because he was I think a wannabe martial artist guy, and he didn't want to talk the law. But finally, I'm like, he was agreeing with me with everything, and then he was just agreeing with me because he wanted my money for the retainer. And then I said, well, if I give you the retainer, you're going to file an order to show cause. And he's like, oh, no, I'm not doing that. I go, what am I giving you the money for? So I'm giving you an example of lawyers. They'll tell you what you want to hear. And when they get your money, if you read any books out there about lawyers, everybody says the same thing. Once they get your money, you never hear from them again. Okay. Oh, let me apologize ahead of time. if I make any mistakes, okay? Because sometimes I rewatch my videos and I catch myself, making these dumb mistakes, and I apologize. Okay, I mean, I've been doing this for a while, and it doesn't get any easier because I've been making videos for a while, and I've apologized, and I'll apologize again. I sometimes I keep forgetting that I always have new subscribers, and it's okay for me to discuss things that I've discussed in the past. Sometimes in my mind, I think I'm still speaking to my old subscribers. Okay, there's probably a lot of subscribers. Okay, they don't even listen to my videos anymore. Okay, what I want to talk about today is, this basic stuff. I had somebody reach out to me, and he had my paperwork, and I said, well, they're violating your due process, and he didn't even know what due process was. Okay, what due process is you have rights under the Constitution and your states. I would suggest you look at the United States Constitution, but look at your Constitution in your state, and try and focus more on your state constitution. These courts are notorious for playing these games where I can't tell you how many times I've had people submit my paperwork like a dismissal or something, and the judge will dismiss it for failure to state a claim under Federal Rules 12b-6. But then when we cite federal rules, they'll dismiss it and say, "Oh well, federal laws are not enforceable in state courts." So when it is accommodating to them, it's okay. And then it's opposite for us. We can't use it, but you can. Real quickly, just to remember. Okay, there's a case law, Howlett versus Rose. All right, real fast here. Here it is right here. Howlett versus Rose. Okay. It's a Supreme Court case, 1990. And by the way, I've had people go to court prepared, and they tried using this, federal laws are not applicable in state courts. And I've had people cite this case and shut the judge up, and then the judge will move on and try and dismiss the case on something else. Okay? This is why it's important that you try and learn as much as you can. It's a lot, but if you just this one thing alone can help you. Okay? Again, it's helped plenty of people that I've, with my paperwork. All right? So what it says is federal law is enforceable in state courts, not because Congress has determined that federal courts would otherwise be burdened, or state courts might provide a more convenient form, although both might well be true, but because the Constitution and laws passed pursuant to it are much laws in the states. In other words, the Constitution is enforceable in state courts. And they consider the Constitution federal. Okay, so it's Howlett versus Rose. Okay, so just in case you cite a federal law. All right. Due process. Okay, this is Murray's Leslie versus Hoboken. Let's get my mug out of the way. All right, now this is an 1856 case. Somebody reached out to me, and this is why I've mentioned in the last couple of videos, you got to be careful where you get your information from, because there's a lot of information out there to steer you away from certain case laws. So there was a case law, and because I wasn't ready to go there, I forgot it. But anyway, the whole gist was you're not allowed to cite case laws before 1938, which is, I don't believe it's true, because I've never heard that before in court. I know the case law. It's not important right now, but let me just show you why it's not true, because this is the case right here, Murray's. All right, House cited. This case was still cited in 2018, okay, by the Supreme Court. Okay, so if the Supreme Court is citing case law before 1938, it's okay for us. Okay, just real simple. All right, and what due process is okay. Due process clause, among other things, protects those settled usages and modes existing. See, common and state statute law in England. And I believe I brought this up in the last couple of videos, but again, we got to keep discussing this because it's repetition. All right, due process of law were undoubtedly intended to convey the same meaning as the words by the law of the land. The law of the land is the Constitution. So, due process for you, it has to be the Constitution. Your rights under the Constitution. Okay, so basically, this the gist of it is, you cannot be deprived of life, liberty, or property unless by a judgment by peers. Your peers are your fellow humans in a trial. Okay, and every state says a trial by jury shall remain inviolate, meaning it's there forever. And under the United States Constitution, you got the Sixth Amendment, which is for criminal matters, but more importantly for us, this is considered a civil matter. They don't like us bringing up trial by jury. And by the way, my paperwork, we requested trial by jury plenty of times. And for 3 years I've been doing this now, I've never gotten a response from the court that's legit. It's always some type of trickery. They'll say, well, child support cases, you can't use trial by jury. No, that's paternity, because paternity is not considered a monetary issue. They're just trying to establish that you're the father. That way they can hammer you with child support. Okay? But I've yet to get a response. It's always some type of trickery. The court misrepresenting a law, misrepresenting a case law. So it's never, well, you cannot use trial by jury and child support. And then they'll say that, but then when we correct them in an objection, they ignore it. That's another thing that the courts do. They won't acknowledge your facts that you present to them. Okay, they just ignore it. Okay, so right here it says, but by a judgment of peers or the law of the land. Okay, so that's the Constitution, and you cannot be deprived of life, liberty, or property unless by a judgment by peers. Okay, real simple. So you would not be wrong to demand a trial by jury. Now, if they say no, you got to say, well, when did I waive my rights? When did I knowingly waive my rights? Because what they'll do is, there's another thing that they do is a trickery the states use is when you are using a privilege or protection from the government. I mentioned this in the last video. Your driver's license, okay, your marriage certificate, okay, some kind of medical assistance, right? So this is a good time to bring this right here. Domicile. You aren't subject to civil statutory law without your consent. Your explicit voluntary consent. Okay? We keep talking about consent. All right, so let's look at here. It says, the purpose of establishing government is solely to provide protection. Now, by the way, if you want protection, you ask for it. If not, you want to be left alone. Okay? So you must expressly consent. There's the word, expressly consent. That means you are knowingly consenting. You're not consenting because they didn't explain a law. Like child support it's not a law, by the way, it's a program. All right, and what they do is they trick you into showing up, and then they trick you by not telling you have to consent. Then they trick you by telling you have to, and okay, and you have to respond and say, I am not consenting. I'm waiving. I'm not waiving my rights, and I do not remember expressing my consent to accept any type of services. What service or protection from the government have I received that I waive my rights? See what response you get. See, here's the thing. Those who have made such a choice become customers. Child support, customer, they have a customer service line. You're considered a customer. I was just looking at paperwork somebody sent me from New York, and it says petitioner, and in parentheses, it says applicant. That's the scam. Okay? They do this all over. You go to, wherever you live, whatever court, common pleas in Pennsylvania, circuit court, New York, it's family court, okay? And what they do is you go to the clerk's office, but it's really a 4D office. You have a bunch of people there, and the women are there. I remember going there a couple of years ago, and it was like a line, and they were bringing the women in, and all the clerk employees, which was really they're 4D contractors. They're just signing people up. That's all they're doing. Oh, do you have a social security number? Okay, we'll get that later. And the applicant is not presenting any evidence whatsoever. And then your whole life is destroyed. But it's a customer service. Every child support hotline is an 800 number, 888 number. It's a customer service line. Okay, it's a customer service. It's commerce. It's interstate commerce. Okay, so here's some words: citizens, residents, inhabitants, persons, individuals. You don't want to be any of these. Don't let them call you any of those terms. Non-residents, okay? So under the Uniform Interstate Family Support Act, UIFSA, one second, Uniform Interstate Family Support Act, basis for jurisdiction over non-resident. Okay, I mentioned back in a few videos ago, whenever you see these words like non-resident, when do you ever call somebody a resident or non-resident? Then you should be suspicious. Okay, individual. Okay, so here's another thing. Remember I talked to you guys yesterday, last video. State. See the state with the capital S? That means that's a federal jurisdiction. You don't live in a federal jurisdiction. You live in a state with a small s. Okay? So that means it doesn't apply to you. Okay? They, in 1933, I'll tell the story again, the country was bankrupt. Everybody had to turn in all their gold. But guess it only applied to people, it only applied to the federal jurisdictions. But, I don't know if it was 50 states back then. It might have been 48 states. But they all turned in their gold because they were all deceived. Okay? So we know what the difference is. So if that's the case, due process also includes their definitions. So right here, I showed you last video, state. Okay? This is Chapter 7, Social Security. That's, by the way, that's what the child support laws are under. 42 U.S.C. 651 through 669 subsection B. Okay? So that means that all of those, it's a program, by the way, all of those codes, United States codes, right? These are definitions. So state, I told you guys, District of Columbia. So that means income withholding under 42 U.S.C. 666, which is what all the child support agencies claim is their jurisdiction to issue income withholding. Well, it doesn't apply to you because you do not live in a federal jurisdiction. Okay. All right. So people ask me all the time, well, if I already have an ongoing child support case I've been paying, well, you could always file a writ of habeas corpus. Okay? All right. We have this is a New York State case. Let me use this case here. All right. The writ of habeas corpus is the fundamental instrument for safeguarding individual freedom against arbitrary and lawless state action. Okay? This is a 2007 case in the United States Court of Appeal, the Ninth Circuit, very liberal Ninth Circuit. Okay? So they're acknowledging that. So that means any type of restraint, any type of lawless action, doesn't say anything about being imprisoned or jailed. Okay? This is another good case, Harris versus Nelson. The district court issued an order to show cause and respondent made a return. Okay? He did an order to show cause. Yeah, disallowed. This is what happened. This is how they ended up going to the Supreme Court. The writ of habeas corpus is a fundamental instrument for safeguarding individual freedom against arbitrary and lawless state action. So right then and there, you should be allowed to file a writ of habeas corpus. You should be. Okay? The courts are very, very tough. They will pull out all stops to prevent you from filing this. Oh, and listen, a lot of people have filed it. Well, they pull out all stops, but then eventually you get it filed. Because I give you guys clerk paperwork and get it. I've got a lot of people that got the paperwork through, but then this is where the famous one-line responses come from. Writ of habeas corpus is denied. No reasons. Or other places will try and trick you into filing a order to show cause, which is a procedural motion. Okay, the difference is the writ of habeas corpus is guaranteed by the Constitution. An order to show cause, is it? So if a judge doesn't sign an order to show cause, all right, but if they deny an order a writ of habeas corpus, they're depriving you of a constitutional right. Then you can, you could sue them if you wanted to. All right, and on that, all right. So what happens if you try and sue them? Now when you try and assert sovereignty in a court, they fix that good. But that sovereign citizen stuff. All right, but here's another thing. The government, they're notorious for asserting their sovereign immunity. So in other words, you don't have sovereign immunity. You know why? Because in the courts, you're a thing. You're not considered a human. That's why your name's in all capital letters. You're considered an object. All right, you're not considered a living, breathing human. So that's another thing. But federal government, they gave themselves. But here's case laws. Okay, so this is from the Supreme Court. When a state enters into business relations and makes contracts, by the way, that's what they're doing in every state with the child support, is contracts. With private persons, it waives sovereignty, becomes a business. Okay? That's why if you do business with, if you have a contract like a credit card, Bank of America cannot claim sovereignty because it's a corporation. All right? Well, that's what happens with the state government. They're a corporation. Okay? The doctrine right here, Behrens versus Butts, the doctrine of sovereign immunity raised by government defendants is inapplicable since plaintiffs contend that the defendant's action would be beyond the scope of their authority. See, that's the thing. That's what always annoys me with the judicial immunity. This also goes for sovereign immunity, judicial immunity as well. That's a presumption. See, the reason why you're trying to sue a judge, a lawyer, fake judge, is because they're violating your constitutional rights, your rights as a man, as a woman. So they're not immune from doing that, but they're just telling you that to see if you know, to say, hold on a second, that's only a presumption. They're presumed immune, just like you're supposed to be. You're technically presumed immune also because you're presumed innocent. See, it's all word games. If you know how to play, to play the game, you can get around it. Okay, so if any of you ever try and sue these people, you're gonna say, no, they're not immune from violating my rights. They're presumed. I have evidence to show it. They deprived me of my right to a trial by jury. They deprived me of my First Amendment right to be left alone. Okay? Your First Amendment right, you have a right to be left alone. Except you're home one day and you get a letter in the mail saying somebody's claiming you owe them a bunch of money. Then you find out from watching videos like mine and other people that the states are making money on child support. You're nothing, they're super aggressive with you because they're making money off of you. Okay, and I watch a lot of shows, like political shows and stuff, and every once in a while you'll hear like a politician say about these aggressive state practices, and then he'll say, or she'll say, then my constituents have to sue to get their property back. That's what's going on with this, with child support. Then you got to sue to get your money back. And that's rough by itself. Okay, it's it's not easy, but the best thing to do is to file paperwork before you go. Okay, many of my people who have gotten off child support, they filed the paperwork before they went to court. Okay, that's one of the best things you can do. Is before you go to court, file paperwork. All right. This is somebody back in August who did exactly that. Okay, he filed the paperwork. They tried to deny it. All right, and he was victorious. All right, I usually show these in the beginning. I just wanted to show, to people who might be new to my channel. Okay, I have helped a lot of people. All right, I'm not blowing smoke. I'm not a liar. I'm not a scam artist. Okay, I'm really here to try and help people. I'm trying to make more. I'm trying to do at least a video a week. I'm going to try and keep up with that. Okay. Oh, also with the writ of habeas corpus, what it's made to do is to cut through all the procedural mazes. So they're going to tell you, oh, you got to file an objection. You got to file an appeal. That's all baloney. That's all time consuming. That's what a writ of habeas corpus was meant for. To bypass the procedural maze. Okay? All right, so listen, we're getting close to 30 minutes. All right, yeah, it's important to understand that you're domiciled and you're not a resident, all right? So just I talked about that in the last video. Here's some good case laws. I brought it up last time, but these are really good to copy down. Okay? The courts are supposed to protect you. They're not there to trick you. So if you know that straight off the bat, you can bring that up. And if a court is being deceptive, you say, hold on a second. It's my understanding the court's supposed to be protecting of my rights. It's my understanding that you have an oath of office. It's my understanding, and by the way, these lawyers are supposed to help you. They're not supposed to be conning you. If you were to look at their the ethics, a lawyer's ethics. Okay, if you get nothing nothing to do, Google it. Lawyers' Code of Ethics. Okay? The general government emanates from the people, and its powers are to be exercised directly upon them for their benefit. So, like, the government's supposed to help you. They're not supposed to be trying to rip you off. Okay? Waivers of constitutional rights not only must be voluntary, they must be knowing, intelligent acts. So, in other words, when did I waive these rights? Remember I mentioned this about 10, 15 minutes ago, whatever. When did I express consent to waive these rights? Please tell me, so I don't make that mistake again. Okay? And this is the case law. It is the duty of the courts to be watchful for constitutional rights of the citizen and against any, right? That's what I was just saying, stealthy encroachments. Like, you're implying consent because you showed up. They're famous for that trick. That's the reason why they threaten you. You got to show up. You may be arrested. You got to show up. Your license will be suspended. You better show up. They're going to issue a default judgment. Okay? All right, so we're going to end the video there. My email is rick@me.com. Okay, guys, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.